Hey besties, today we're bringing on a very special guest, Emily. She's a mother of two amazing little boys with ASD. We're so pleased to be able to have her on the show to speak with us today.
Emily has been through a number of challenges before and after receiving her boys' diagnosis. She is a big advocate for her boys and is very involved in their upbringing. Emily will share with us her trials and revelations and insightful tips for all parents and children on the spectrum. We hope her experiences help you and your families grow and to also be aware of the resources and the importance of proper and early diagnosis. Hey, besties! Sophia and Francis here. We're so excited. Today we have Emily joining us on our podcast. We would like to introduce to you a very special woman, a autism super mom to two amazing little boys.
Hi Emily, can you please tell us, our listeners, more about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a mom in my 30s. I work part-time. I have two boys who are 6 and 9, and they're both on the autism spectrum.
Can you tell us a little bit more about when was the first time that you noticed that something was unusual with the boys?
Yeah, with my oldest, when he was a baby, he was a great baby. When he was 11 months, he started just becoming really, really, really cranky. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong. He started hitting me all the time and pulling my hair. And he was just very upset. And that was kind of the first sign, but I didn't think anything was wrong with that. I just thought we're entering the toddler years, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I tried to educate myself on, how to raise your toddler and how to handle tantrums. I don't think I realized at the time that his tantrums were kind of out of the scope of what is typical. And when he wasn't speaking, when he was 18 months, he still had really no words and very little babbling. It was recommended we go to speech therapy.
Mm-hmm. Who recommended?
Our pediatrician. I remember
Mhm.
the pediatrician saying, so how many words does he have? Like they ask you at the 12-month appointment, how many words?
Yeah.
And I said, none. And she said, oh, that's fine. That's fine. 12 months, that's normal.
Yeah.
And they ask you these typical screening questions that now I know are screening questions, but then, I didn't know. It's like, does your child point to things? Does your child make eye contact? And I find those questions really hard to answer for moms. I feel that they're also not universal because autism comes in so many different ways. The eye contact question is my least favorite question because I don't even know what it means. Like, does your child make eye contact with you? It's like, he's a child. I don't know. Maybe yes, no. It's just one of those questions that I don't think I get really. So when he was 18 months old and he still had no words, she said, let's do speech therapy. And so we went to a speech therapist and had a terrible experience. Yeah, she had no empathy. She told me when he cried, I should fake cry to make him stop. Like, like that, like mocking.
Yeah.
Instead of accepting his feelings and regulating him together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And she would say, don't be sad, be happy. And that kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I believe you should teach children to feel their feelings, not ignore them. And so that was it was a really just terrible experience, honestly. My next step was at his 2-year appointment I had a new pediatrician, unfortunately. And I was at that time saying, I have to get help. This is really hard. He was a very difficult toddler. It was exhausting. And I could see that he was unhappy. He was genuinely an unhappy child. And he still wasn't talking much at all. Maybe a dozen words. And so at that appointment, he was one of those oh, all kids learn at different stages. You can't compare, it just takes time. He really didn't want to address it. And I broke down in tears, kind of like forced myself to cry, to tell you the truth, because I needed attention. I needed him to know that I was
You needed the
struggling.
pediatrician to address the issue, correct, as
Yeah,
professionally, and not
Dismiss your feelings.
exactly. I mean, women encounter that with doctors all the time, that like you kind of have to exaggerate stuff to get them to take you seriously. So I broke down in tears. He was super uncomfortable. He was just like, wouldn't look at me and was like, okay, well, I guess you should get an appointment with the behavioral pediatrician. So that worked.
Oh, now you're going to another place.
Yeah. What's the word? Behavioral developmental pediatrician.
Yeah.
And that appointment, the guy was kind of like, your child is showing some symptoms, but I don't think enough to cross over to declare it autism. He said he had flavors of autism, and he recommended I go to the regional center. And I had never even heard of the regional center at that point. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know this was a resource. I mean, I wish I could post it on every person's door who has a baby. Like,
wow.
these are your options.
Do you wish that the pediatrician had done something different? The first one, in the beginning, if they would have provided you with the regional center services, resources.
I think I could have had an evaluation done for free through the regional center. Anybody can request one, no matter their circumstances, no matter their income, even if they're just being a, overly anxious type parent who's worried. Schedule an evaluation. It's not going to hurt. And so I wish I had known that was an option, because by the time he got in at 2.5 through the regional center, did those evaluations, got him approved for speech therapy, it was like kind of late. Like we only had 6 months until he was 3, and then you're kind of booted out of that early intervention program.
Right.
Yeah, so he basically missed all the early intervention services that he possibly could have had in the beginning. He missed that. He only got him 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, less than 6 months.
Less than 6 months.
He got speech therapy twice a week is all they qualified him for. And we had an amazing speech therapist this time. And she came to our home, and they had an incredible bond, and she helped so much, and she was a support for me. And she's the one that started noticing more signs of his sensory frustrations, of, just different little things she was seeing. He was W sitting, some stimming he was doing. And she said, I'd like you to have a sensory evaluation done by an OT. And so she, arranged it through the regional center. And then they added, sensory processing disorder to his diagnosis with the regional center. And that enabled him to get the center program, where you get to go 3 days a week and go to a little, kind of like a little preschool program. And yeah, I wish I'd had that for the last year. Imagine if he'd had that for a whole year. Instead, he had it for like 4 months.
Wow. So basically, you were being limited.
Yeah.
And you were being kept in the dark instead of having all these resources that you could have had at hand right away. You were
because of the doctor seeing there was at risk. Your child was at risk. He could have possibly just did a quick evaluation and send you to the regional center before.
Right away.
Definitely. It would have helped a lot.
Emily, could you tell us the names of your boys and their diagnosis?
Yes. So Charlie, he's 9. He has autism spectrum disorder, and he also has general anxiety disorder and social anxiety disorder. And Leo is 6, and he has autism spectrum disorder. I'd love to share about how Leo got diagnosed.
Yes, please. We'd love to hear.
Please tell us.
So long story short with Charlie, for a while we lived without a diagnosis because he was getting all the services he needed without it. And the thing about a name on your record, it's not always important. It's important because if it opens doors for you. And we had enough doors open just by his behaviors and other things we were seeing. So he was able to get services at school, such as OT, speech, and resource. So that was going well. I finally decided I wanted the big evaluation. They call it a team evaluation. And that's where you have the psychologist, the SLP, the OT. They all evaluate him. It's a long session. I thought he was old enough to handle it. And he just barely kind of crossed over the line to finally be diagnosed by doctors as autism spectrum disorder. So at that time, they said, okay, well, just so you know, we were with Kaiser. So it's all kind of like your insurance and your healthcare in one. They said you're
Yeah.
automatically approved to have any siblings get tested. And Leo at the time was like a year old. And I thought for sure he was neurotypical. Thought he was starting to talk. I thought this is amazing. Raising a neurotypical child is so different. Um, and I thought I was, knew everything about autism and would never miss any signs. So, I said, nah, I'm not going to bother. The last thing I need in my life is more appointments. So no, we're not going to do an evaluation for Leo. And then 6 months later, Leo had to go to the ER because he had a rash that was kind of scary. And so we went to the ER and the doctor, and so Leo was freaking out. Now he's 2, he was like almost 2, and he was freaking out and kind of, just screaming, all this stuff. And the doctor starts asking me these questions. And this is an ER doc, so he doesn't have our whole patient history. He doesn't know about Charlie, right? He only knows about Leo.
Uh-huh.
And he starts asking me those questions. Does Leo make eye contact with you? Does Leo take your hand and pull you toward things? Does Leo play with other kids? And I said, I know where you're going. I know what these questions are. And I
Yeah.
thought,
I've heard them once before.
Yeah.
oh, yes, I know the standard questions. And I went, interesting. And so I decided to, go, okay, Emily, you missed this. Let's go get an evaluation. And sure enough, right away, he qualified. And I was surprised.
Wow.
At the time, I had become really involved online with autism acceptance groups and
Mhm.
was reading a lot of information from autistic adults. That was my main source. And I think that's really important. And because of that, I was able to accept Leo's diagnosis a lot easier. Because at that time I was just really immersed in that community that reminded me that this isn't a negative. Yes, it's going to have challenges. Yes, we're going to have a lot of paperwork and appointments, but it's also a gift, and that he's a wonderful person and is going to have a good life ahead of him if we put in the right work. It'll be great. He's going to be a great person, just like Charlie. So at the time, it was exhausting, but I was ready to handle it.
Emily, thank you so much for sharing. I wanted to just ask, do you feel that if you would have received the proper support for you and for your family alongside the services for your sons, that it would have impacted you in a much more positive way, and it would have promoted like personal growth for within the family and for the kids?
Yeah, I really wish that it was more wraparound care when they were diagnosed. I think there should be like a family counseling offered with every diagnosis, and personal counseling and training, whatever the family needs, because it's not just an individual who has autism. The whole family is part of that person's system. And I really think that was the missing component for me for many years. And I felt like I'm alone at sea. I'm on a raft. I'm finding my own way. I'm the one digging in and Googling and researching and reading the books. It would be much better if it was presented to me um, in a more compassionate and supportive way.
Yeah, we strongly believe in that as well. We think that it's definitely a family system and everyone is involved. It takes a village to raise a child. and how can they just cater services to just the children if the parents are doing it all day every day alongside them, and who's there all the time if not you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and basically when you I feel like when a parent receives the diagnosis, they just get the diagnosis and they're like, "See you later, bye." And they're off with the diagnosis, don't know what to do, what to search because I mean, Google is so huge and there's so many things that you can find and we just don't know what's right and what's not, what's appropriate resource, what's credible. There's just so many things and I feel like if doctors paid attention and did more of a family approach, things would be more beneficial and it'll support the family as a whole system.
Yeah. I actually think what would be amazing if somebody did like an intro to autism class for parents to take, just to teach you what it's about. Like you don't even know what it means when you hear about this. You kind of know what you've seen from these little like clips on TV that also kind of, they're usually terrible. They kind of make it look like a horror story, and that these children, are unreachable and it's going to devastate your life, and that's not an accurate picture at all. But if we had something like that, I haven't talked about my husband much. I don't want to make it seem like I do everything. He's very supportive. But that would have engaged him more. I'm kind of proactive, so I'm like, I go get the information. He's open to it, but it kind of has to come to him. And I imagine a lot of other parents are like that too. So if there was a class like, hey, take this course and it will, you know, teach you the basics, just teach you the understanding of what it is and what you're dealing with and what you can expect and what some options are.
Yes, we totally agree. We wish that doctors would do that more and give families a plan, a proper plan, and a guidance to what to do next. Because at the end of the day, the pediatrician is with you.
Is the first person you go to. That's your go-to at first. Like if anyone sees something wrong with their child, right away they automatically like, oh, let's take it to the pediatrician, especially when it's a young child. So that's your first stop, and that person should always kind of lead you in the right direction. And it's not the case. Like most people we talk to are saying that that's not how it went. That's not how their diagnosis story process happened, unfortunately.
Just like you had to go to one doctor, he dismissed that at 18 months, and then you had to go to another doctor at 2 years old.
By the time you got the proper sources and therapy, I mean, it's not too late, but there's holes in the development because there was a lack of services and attention.
A lot of general pediatricians also don't know a lot about autism or about other developmental disabilities. They know a little bit, um, but as they say, a little bit of information can be really dangerous. um, and so, I mean, they know about it, but they're not experts, and it's important to meet with an expert even if you suspect the slightest thing, because it doesn't hurt to get more information and to receive an evaluation.
Yes, and I believe that some people are scared to get the diagnosis, the label of autism, but people need to understand that before age of 3 you can have early intervention and there's nothing on your record.
Yeah, that's also something, a lot of friends I have that really struggled with not wanting to hear those diagnoses. My friend, her son was going through the same thing my son was with speech, and she couldn't help but feel like when they're saying your son is speech delayed, she couldn't help but feel like they're saying my kid is dumb. And she really resisted. She didn't even want to do the speech therapy, even though it was free through the regional center. She really didn't want to, but she kind of succumbed to it. She's like, okay, once a week, but she wouldn't do it twice a week. And it's such a personal response. Everybody's different. I don't judge her for that. But I did have a totally different experience. For me, I was struggling so much. I was happy to have an answer. I was thrilled to have validation in black and white. that, I'm not just a bad parent. It's not my fault. That there's things that we can do, knowing that there's a pathway now. It can be a huge relief to get that diagnosis, and to know, okay, this is where we're at, and there's an answer. It's a lot better than wandering through the wilderness going, okay, why is my child like this? What is happening? How do I solve this? I was actually pretty happy.
We can only imagine uh, why certain people feel the need, feel almost embarrassed or ashamed to be, to have that label for their children. But we, maybe it's also correlates to the stigma that surrounds the, autism and children with autism, and like you said, those scary videos that they show you on online or on the TV, like of how life is with children with, with developmental challenges. So I feel like some parents are just terrified that they would have to embark on that kind of journey where they would be just like in the abyss, and.
Yeah, sometimes when we're having like a tough moment at home, I imagine to myself, I'm like, oh, if the camera crew was here now, they would clip all of these terrible moments together throughout the whole day. And if somebody saw that, they would think we have, this awful life. And the truth is, those problems pass quickly. We have a lot of fun, a lot of joy. My kids have amazing moments where they're so smart, they're so sweet, they're so joyful. But if you took anyone's bad moments and clipped them all together, it's going to be, you know, really tough to watch. So I always just feel like the stereotyping of autism is really unfortunate.
Right. It is. It is. It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's pretty it's
I mean,
pretty
I want
gray,
people to
and
know that we, of
it's
course,
like a
have
gray
struggles, and
area
I do want
almost.
sympathy and I do want support and help. Um, but, we're not to be pitied at all. We are very fortunate.
because there's obviously beautiful days and beautiful side to each of your boys, and they're just amazing little human beings.
Yeah, and they're exceptional, and they should be,
And I'm sure they have their own talents.
and they're very unique. You want to tell us about maybe?
What are their
Yeah.
favorite things to do and their talents that they
Yeah,
have?
absolutely. You know, if I could press a button and remove their autism, I wouldn't, because it's part of them. It's part of what makes them them. Do I wish we could reduce or eliminate some of the symptoms that are harder for them and for the family? Yes. But at the same time, that's sometimes like kit and caboodle with the autism. And they have so many amazing talents. Charlie is an artist. He loves to draw. He loves to make up stories and write books. He's a little philosopher. He'll he was 4 or 5 years old and starting to ponder the meaning of life, and it's just so cute. I think he's really smart and gonna be an artist and a writer one day. And then Leo is an amazing builder. He loves his Legos, his blocks, anything he can build with. He is an outdoor obsessed child. I think he's gonna be like a rock climber one day. And he also loves like yard work and working hard at something. He won't just do like rake the leaves once. He'll do it until it's done. It's incredible.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's good for people to hear that you have two different kids with the same diagnosis, but they're totally different with different interests and different abilities. And I think that's amazing for people to hear that it's not just one stereotype, and they're very unique in their own way.
Yes. It's something they always tell you in the autism community. If you've met one person with autism, then you've met one person with autism. But yet I still miss that my second child was also on the spectrum, because I didn't know. And I was thinking I was becoming, an expert in training on the subject, and yet I missed my own child's. Now I look at obvious signs because he was so different from his brother. So it shows up in so many different ways.
Thank you for sharing that. What type of therapies you can share that worked for you and your family?
Yes. The therapies that have worked best for us so far is I speech therapy. I think is I think the biggest hurdle is increasing communication. That solves a lot of issues. That solves a lot of tantrums and meltdowns, um, and helps build connection. And then also DIR floor time is a system that I've really come to adore and respect. And um, yeah, so Sophia, that's how I met Sophia, is she's been working with Leo for, I have no idea, has it been a year?
I think it's gonna be a year in September.
Oh my gosh, we're so lucky we've had you for a year. Even though we moved away and we don't get to see each other as much, and of course there's a little pandemic that keeps us from seeing each other.
We
Um,
make it work.
we make it work. We've done video sessions. Honestly, I love DR floor time so much. I've read 2 books now about it, and I've learned so much from Sophia that we integrate into our lives. But Sophia is the one that really got us started in it. I had heard about it. I had heard it was good. I knew some basics, but not very much. I knew I just preferred a more developmental approach. We've never done ABA. It's not off the table forever. You never know if we find the right person, the right group, the right circumstances. But it's not. It doesn't really mesh with my parenting style and my values. So that's been sometimes hard to explain to doctors. ABA is the kind of like considered the gold standard, and doctors look at you like you're, some wackadoodle, and you're like, oh, I'm not sure I want to do it. um, that's been tough.
That's
Yeah, because they don't get. I feel like the doctors don't give a choice to families, and they
Yeah.
automatically prescribe ABA to every single child, and they don't give the developmental approach
yeah,
choice.
because DIR integrates the family and the play aspect into the therapy session. So really focusing on the internal state of the child, like his emotions, his everything else that goes into DIR. We're strong advocates for it.
I think some ABA is more, some people are more developmental focused and they are looking at the emotions. But right away, I felt really challenged because before we had our diagnosis, I had already kind of determined, my husband and I had determined kind of our approach to parenting. And I had read some different stuff like from Alfie Kohn, like about the consequence using punishments and rewards in parenting, and I had decided I wasn't going to take that behaviorist type of approach to handling stuff. And so then when you get your kid and that's kind of what they're saying everywhere. Like you read a pediatric book, you read the magazines, they're discouraging more and more using timeout. They're discouraging you from saying good job. They're discouraging lots of stuff like that that's more rewards and punishment. But yet when you get a diagnosis, they tell you do ABA, which is going to be all, sticker charts and prizes and reward system.
The glamorized reward
And
system.
deserving something.
Yeah. Right. Oh, and so I felt really conflicted because I'm like, okay, well, do I have to do it this way because he has autism? Is it like he won't understand the other way that I was planning to do, which was more like talking about it and discussions and, redirection and skills building and stuff like that. I said, "Oh, is that not going to work now?" And I went to a meeting at his school where they had an ABA person there, and I asked her this. I said, I really had hoped to work more on internal motivation with my child rather than external motivation. I want him to want to do these things. And she kind of laughed at me and she said, well, we all get paid to work, you know, And I thought to myself, and I should have said it, but I said, you work with kids with special needs. I don't think you're doing it for the money. Because you're probably not making that
Wow.
much, and you're obviously doing it because you have a passion. You're living proof that people aren't just motivated by what they get out of something, right? We're motivated internally. And the more you are motivated internally, the more successful you'll be at something, right? That it's in your heart to do. It's what you're good at. It's what you love. Then you're going to be successful. But if you're just doing it for the paycheck, or you're doing it for the sticker or the chocolate, I don't think that you're going to be successful.
And yes, I agree. And also, the confidence level won't be there as well.
Exactly. Sorry, that's kind of a tangent, and but yeah, all that said is that we really like the DIR floor time approach, and I'm looking for more ways to integrate that and learn more with both kids.
What do you wish can be done differently for the special needs community, for your children, for yourself?
Huh. What do I wish could be different? I wish, this is a very specific thing, but what I think would help special needs families the most is if this is actually a technology thing. I wish there was a really great portal online that held all of your information that your regional center used, that all your social services could be connected to, that you could keep all your reports of the kids. If my pediatrician does an evaluation, it goes on there. I wish it was easier to manage all that. And so that we could work as a team, all these different agencies you work with could see the big picture of your child. Because what happens is you go to the regional center, then the school, then you hire a private, specialist, then you go to your doctor, and there's no communication among all of them. And we're not seeing the big picture of the child. And that's something I wish existed. And were some other way of communicating and getting everybody on board as that child's support system. Like, that's their team, and here's all the different facets of it. It's very tough to stay organized with all the paperwork too. So anything like that would be really helpful, and it could be really clear for people that aren't able to devote a lot of time and energy. It would show them their options, and show them what they need to do, what's the next step, things like that.
That sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Um, Hopefully soon something like that will
Yeah.
will come up and we'll all be
If
able
any
to join as
developers
members.
want to use that idea, take it, make it. I own no rights to it. I want you to do it. Please.
We're going to look into it. Emily, do you have any tips or advice for young moms or young parents that are just got the diagnosis and they're beginning their special needs
Yes.
journey?
The first advice I have is to remember that you really are the expert on your child. And when I look back on Charlie's first speech therapist that I didn't feel comfortable with, I didn't agree with her approach. I was too meek and complacent because I thought she was the
Mhm.
expert. I'm the nobody here. I'll just go along with what she says. And today I would not do that. I would politely assert myself and say, that doesn't really work with my approach. I don't think this is the direction I want to take. Would you mind adjusting that? Just going through this distance learning, I told my child's resource teacher, I said, you know what? We're not going to do resource lessons distance. I'm sorry. It's not going to work. And we're not going to do OT. We'll do speech. And that's it, because he's already doing enough and it's too much. So once upon a time when I was getting started on this, I would not have advocated like that. I would have just gone along with it. And now I know you can decline anything you want. You can push for anything you want. And when we're talking about school, medical, regional center, state, federal, you are in charge. And you need to kind of assert yourself as the authority on your family.
That's amazing advice. And who is the number one in the child's life? It's the parents. You know, at the end of the day, it's you guys that are there from the day that they're born and every day thereafter. So, um, if only you knew what you knew now, right? You could have just went back in time and started the process sooner. But maybe by you sharing your story, more people will be able to hear your experiences and learn from them, and insert that into their lives with their children.
Yes, I hope so. And the other thing I'd want to emphasize is acceptance, acceptance, acceptance. It's one of the hardest hurdles for me personally. I love and accept my children, but I also have to learn to love and accept my life that is because of our circumstances. And the thing that has helped me to do that is to learn from autistic adults because they know what they're talking about more than any professional. And to hear them speak is absolutely life changing and helps me accept my circumstances so much better. And there's nothing, there's no devastation here. We can choose what therapies we want to do. It's not an emergency, it's not a crisis. Um, So when the doctor tells you you need to do OT 3 times a week, speech 3 times a week, ABA 2 hours a day, you know, you can say, what's really important? Because you know what? This isn't an emergency. So let's slow down and prioritize what really matters to us the most and what's going to be the most beneficial.
Thank you so much, Emily, for all your advice and for being with us here today and sharing your experiences. You're an amazing mom and you're a superhero, and you and your husband are doing a great job. Sophia always talks about little Leo and how he's progressed over the past year, and with DIR, because we're big advocates for that, for DIR floor time. um, and we're just super excited to be able to be here today with you. We're very honored, and we thank you again for sharing all your stories with us.
And we hope that your story will touch a lot of people and give that reassurance for every family that's going through what you are.
Well, thank you, ladies, for having me. And thank you for all you do to help our kids in this community. You're angels and saints. I am thankful every day for all of the wonderful teachers and therapists my kids have had. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the work you do.
Thank you, Emily. We really appreciate that. We're here. I feel like we were born to advocate and to spread awareness and to bring more love and compassion to our kids in the community and our families, because we all need that. Everybody needs support, and um, where better else to get it than from your favorite therapist or from your bestie.
Perfect. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
having me, girls.
Thank you.